Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Provincial Elections Forum on Environmental Issues. My name is Stephen Scott, and I'll be your moderator tonight, along with Derek Satnick, who will be helping take audience questions a little bit later on. I'd like to start by thanking Rockway Mennonite Church for hosting this event and all the other organizers, which include Community Renewable Energy Waterloo, L.I.F.E, Rare Charitable Research Reserve, TransitionKW, Sustainable Waterloo, North Waterloo Region Branch, Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, and Environmental Defense. A special thank you to Rare as well, who will be recording the event and posting it on YouTube by Saturday. The organizers contacted members from all of the parties within the Cambridge, Kitchener Centre, Kitchener-Conestoga, and Kitchener-Waterloo ridings. Although we wish to have one representative from each party and one candidate for each riding, this was a logistical challenge. We do, however, thank the candidates who are in attendance for being here. We do regret that the PC party did not send a candidate who were unable. The candidates that we have today with us include Mark Kitchener from the Green Party, Eric Davis from the Liberal Party, and Cameron Dearlove of the NDP. The format for the evening will be an introduction of 3 minutes for each candidate. We will follow that with 6 prepared questions, which the candidate received in advance and were able to create responses to, which they will iterate for you today. And we'll follow those up with audience questions, and we'll try and take as many as we can before the end of the night. We'll then do a wrap-up, 2 minutes per candidate, and we hope to adjourn by about 8:45. So I'd like to start then with the introductions, and Cameron Dearlove has offered to take the initiative here and start us off.
Okay, thank you very much and good evening. Thanks very much for having me tonight to the organizers. My name is Cameron Dearlove. I was born and raised here in Waterloo region. I studied law at Laurier University and Nipissing University. I spent 3 years living abroad. I've been a teacher and an employment counselor, and today I'm asked to be your MVP here in Kitchener Centre. I'm really pleased to be here talking today about the environmental issues in this election. I've spent the last few years working in employment services, and part of my focus in my work has been looking at green jobs and talking to people about green jobs. I led the organization of 2 Green Careers events over the last 2 years. The last one we hosted at the museum back in the spring, tracked over 100 job seekers in a number of organizations, some familiar faces that are here today. In this election, the NDP has been both lauded and criticized for our environmental policies, and I do believe that much of the criticism is misleading. We are in fact strong supporters of green energy, stronger in fact than the Liberals as we would halt nuclear expansion, and put that money back into green energy with a bolder green energy targets. We'll phase out coal plants, freeze transit fares, expand public transit, improve cycling infrastructure and safety. We're not just looking at expanding energy production, but also cutting down the energy that we use. So we'll help people both affordability and saving energy, a move that was praised by Greenpeace. What we believe in is balance, finding the right balance between social concerns, environmental concerns, and economic concerns. If there's too much poverty, too much environmental destruction, too much imbalance in wealth, we all lose in the long run. We need a strong government we need a government that will balance, strike a balance and ensure a strong economy, a strong environment, and a strong social sector. I believe that the NDP party will create that type of government. I look forward to our discussion tonight and providing more details about our plan for the province. Thank you.
Mark Kitchener from the Greens.
Good evening. organizers as well. My first one? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to thank you for coming and the organizers as well. My name is Mark Kura. I'm the Green Party candidate for Kitchener Senate, so I believe in the policy of local food and sustainable economic development using a local energy policy. I grew up in Chatham-Kent, and I spent my teenage years with my family's greenhouse and first-hand business where we were dealing with the local farms, and like I said, I became spoiled on local food. I then went to the University of Waterloo to receive my bachelor's degree in applied math, and then went to receive my bachelor's degree in physics. I actually went back to work at my parents' place, and then moved back to work in Kitchener. I've been living in downtown Kitchener for the past 10 years. Been married for the past 4 years for my wife, and we've been living with our 2 cats. As I said, I believe in the Green Party because I support the policy of local food and the local development of local energy sources in a sustainable way. I believe that while local food has not been an issue in this campaign, I do believe that people do want to support local food and believe in local food because it supports the local farmers, which helps our economy, as well as we know that local food is tastier, more nutritious, better, and healthier for you. With regard to the green energy and the local energy policy, I also believe that green technology is going to give us a new industrial revolution. Every year I like to go to the Green Show and check out what is latest and see that there's new developments and new products developing with regard to helping conservation and energy production, and that people do want to do this kind of thing. And we are also very interested in the idea of local energy development, being able to have solar panels on your roof or wood turbines. As well, we also want to support a healthier community because we know that a healthy community leads to healthier people and a healthier environment. And we also are working on a job creation program, which is going to help small to medium businesses, as well as make sure that we help the economy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Eric Davis from the Liberals.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Davis, and I'm the Provincial Liberal candidate for Kitchener-Waterloo. I'd first like to thank you all very much for coming out this evening. One of the issues which has not actually engendered a lot of questions I've found so far this election is the environment. And so I really am glad that I was invited to participate here this evening because I really want to talk about the environment and environmental issues. To tell you a little bit about myself, I've grown up in Kitchener-Waterloo. I went all through public school here. I went to high school at KCI, and I went to L.I.F.E, where I majored in political science and history, not surprisingly. And I then went on to law school at the University of Ottawa. And I am now a lawyer in Waterloo, where I practice municipal and planning law. So I actually do work with a lot of municipalities in the Waterloo region, dealing with planning and development and those sorts of things. So I'm really glad that I was invited here this evening. One of the other roles I've held is that I'm a former ambassador for Sustainable Waterloo. So I really believe passionately in environmental protection. And one of the reasons I decided to run in this election is because I am very proud of the provincial Liberal record on the environment. Whether you like it or not, Dalton McGuinty has been one of the greenest premiers in Canadian history. And let's look at the record. So we introduced the Green Belt. We protected from development land the size of the United Kingdom in Ontario. We implemented the Places to Grow Act, which encourages municipalities to grow, to intensify, and grow in smart ways. We closed 8 coal units, which is the equivalent of taking 7 million cars off the road. We're committed to eliminating all coal-fired generation by 2014. We brought online 900 megawatts of cleaner energy to make up for lack of supply. We've invested in over 5,000 kilometers of power lines. We've brought in conservation initiatives, the Green Energy Act, which has spurred over $20 billion in private investment in the green energy sector, thus far creating 20,000 new jobs. And we're also committed to even moving forward towards the Green Belt. We're committed to the Green Energy Act and the feed-in tariff program, and we're committed to creating an additional 50,000 new green energy jobs for Ontario families, and also becoming a leader in electric vehicles. Thank you.
Eric Davis. Now we'll go to the first prepared question.
This question is about energy. Ontario's energy policy, especially the Green Energy and Green Economy Act, is modeled on policies from other jurisdictions that have proven effective in achieving carbon reductions, job creation, and enhanced energy security. For many voters, jobs are the most immediate issue. Some 2,000 renewable energy sector employees and businesses in Waterloo region rely on the Green Energy Act and the FIT program. And many businesses, communities, and citizens are deeply invested in renewable energy. How will your party's energy policy plan protect or increase the local jobs and investment opportunities the Green Energy Act has helped create? We're going to start with Mark Verkouteren from the Greens.
Well, our policy is to focus on conservation as well as energy development. Our plan for energy development is a local energy development. It's going to work with the municipalities and the people in them, as well to develop a green energy policy. Now, we heard that what happened in actually in Chatham-Kent. You go around, you see there's a lot of wind turbines causing issues. One of the reasons for that is because they could come in, and all the farmers don't mind because they're buying rent, and people live around and have to deal with this. So what we feel, though, is that there needs to be more consultation with people to make sure that they have a share or a part of the energy development. Also, with regard to creating an energy within your community, be able to actually have your community creating the energy, this creates money for the community, which will help create jobs. As well as there's also the possibility of being able to create energy in more northern areas with the use of microhydro, which will generate up to 5 megawatts a year, which will of course help the northern communities and help reduce the grid loss of energy as well. Now we're also going to go into the helping people with conservation in their own homes, and we'll get more details later. And this is actually very beneficial to us. I'll get more details later.
Thank you, Mark. Eric Davis is next.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Obviously, as the creators of the Green Energy Act, we are definitely committed to its continued usage, and we're committed to continuing to promote green energy in Ontario. As some of you may know, when the Liberals took office in 2003, there were approximately 10 wind turbines in all of Ontario. Now there are over 900. David Suzuki himself has even come out and endorsed the Liberal Green Energy Plan. So we are definitely committed to promoting green energy and green energy jobs here in Ontario. And let's also not forget that the Liberals have actually implemented and introduced a long-term energy plan for Ontario. During the previous Tory government, there was no long-term energy plan, save and except potentially lighting candles during all blackouts. So what we are doing in the province is making sure that we have a safe and reliable energy supply, and we also want to continue to bring more renewables online. So obviously we are very much committed to ensuring the continued expansion of the microfit program, encouraging new projects, and really creating tens of thousands of new jobs for Ontario families. Because ultimately, the Green Energy Act and investing in the microfit program and investing in green energy projects is not only smart from a sustainability perspective, but it also makes a great deal of economic sense. This is an area where we have started to become, and which we will continue to be, a North American leader, where we can really lead the new green energy revolution, which will not only help the Ontario economy, but once we actually start expanding and exporting this technology, will also benefit many other provinces, and we can help even around the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Cameron from the NDP.
Okay, typically in partisan politics, you want to say, that the other person's wrong. Sometimes you're not able to do that. I'm actually quite a fan of the Green Energy Act and the idea of investing in green energy and doing so while creating jobs here locally. As I mentioned, being an employment counselor myself, that's a wonderful thing to see. At the same time, there are some differences. I like the Green Energy Act. I think we can be proud of what's been accomplished, but we'd like to shift the focus a little bit, looking at more on the micro side. So we believe in empowering local communities, for example, people, co-ops, could be this church right here with a solar panel, and this type of thing. We believe in smaller projects and not giving away such lucrative contracts to large corporations. Instead, as far as large-scale projects, we believe that we can build it ourselves, and we can build it ourselves at a more affordable rate. And while doing so, actually invest more in green energy. We have targets of 10,700 megawatts in production by 2018, and transport by 2030 would have strict deliver by 5,000 megawatts. And then the big difference is, our belief is that we can do more with green energy and conservation while discontinuing future nuclear projects. And our product, David Suzuki, now in this case, David Suzuki endorsed our plan to stop the expansion at Darlington. And so he's certainly sharing with us. But I believe that our plan is the safer plan, it's the more affordable plan, and I'm quite proud of what we can accomplish.
Thank you, Cameron. For the next question, I should mention that there will be ushers going around handing out collection trays with papers in them that you can write down questions on, and then they'll have those questions brought up to the front to be asked during the question from the audience period. The next question is about land conservation. Is your party in favor of extending the provincial greenbelt into Waterloo region to protect our moraines and rural farms? What other ideas or proposals do you have for smart growth, land conservation, and ensuring a balance between growth and development? And we'll start this with Eric.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Obviously, we're very proud of introducing the green belt into Ontario. We plan on keeping it, and in our platform, we are actually committed to expanding it should municipalities actually request it. So if Waterloo Region requests an expansion of the green belt into Waterloo Region, we will gladly do so. What we're not going to do is we're not going to force the expansion into particular areas. So what we're doing is we're looking for municipalities to say, look, we would like to have the green belt be expanded into our areas. Here are the particular boundaries we would like, and we will gladly facilitate that. Right here in Waterloo Region, some of you, and I don't want to get too technical, but some of you may be familiar that the region of Waterloo has just recently passed a new official plan. And in that official plan, it actually has what's called the countryside line, where the region wants to make sure to limit development to certain boundaries inside the region of Waterloo. It doesn't want development to expand all the way out to the borders of Waterloo Region. So, but right now the regional official plan is under appeal by, I think, 26 different organizations and bodies. And one of the arguments is that the region can't create this countryside line, but one of the things that the provincial government can do to help is actually expand the green belt to make sure that we can protect some of that environmentally sensitive areas. So we're definitely in favor of expanding the green belt, though we're not going to mandate it. We're going to allow municipalities to say, hey, we want more green belt in our area, and we want to encourage that. In relation to growth and development, this is one of the areas that is one of the things that I do almost every day. And what we've implemented is the Places to Grow Act. We have the provincial policy statements, and a lot of other things that really promote intensification, especially in cores. There's no reason why we need to have.
Thank you, Eric.
Pardon me.
Sorry about that. Just as a reminder, we have 2 minutes for these questions. Thank you, Eric Davis. We're now going to go to Cameron. Yes. Sorry.
No problem. As far as land conservation, again, sometimes you can't entirely criticize the previous government. The green belt was a great idea, and we're in favor of expanding it. Similarly, it's looking at the municipality and seeing if municipalities want to take on that kind of expansion. That's the party line. Personally, I'm all in favor of it in Waterloo Region. I think farmland is far too precious for us to continue building on top of, and And another way that we can look at intensification is our transportation grid and, moving away from cars. So, we've had this building plan of, building out and out and out and driving our cars around the city. We need to really look at how we can support public transit and as well as cycling, walking, complete streets planning. And as far as our party, we're looking at a 50-50 cost sharing of operating costs of public transit with municipalities, thereby improving the quality and frequency of road transit and allowing more people to get rid of the car and move to public transit, as well as supporting, for example, LRT here in the Waterloo region. Additionally, we have a cycling plan to help protect cyclists, and also a cycling infrastructure fund, which would go along with building the type of infrastructure we want to see for cycling, making sure it's safe and more accessible for people.
Thank you, Mark. We'll go to Cameron now.
Sorry, that's Cameron. That's fine.
Thank you, Cameron. Apologize, everyone. Having a couple of minutes. Technical difficulties. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay, so with regard to the issue of, I wasn't expanding Greenville, obviously, yet. With regard to other options we're going to look into, what we're going to go into is the alternative land use services. We're going to put $100 million into that. I believe this is something that we're actually starting in this area, which are actually going to pay farmers to help maintain the environmental areas that they have. As we know, that if you look around, you go out in the country, you can see a lot of, it's called bush, that's what it's called, right? Where pretty much it's taking up valuable farmland, and then poor farmers have to maintain it, and there's no incentive to do it. So by providing an incentive to do so, we're going to make sure that these areas exist. We also want to make sure that there's more green space in cities and in communities, because not only is that healthy for the people, this is also important for our water. What happens is that when water hits the ground, it's supposed to sink into the ground and slowly go to the lakes. When it hits some flat surface, a pavement or something, it quickly goes to the lake, picking up all sorts of pollution and such, and this is causing a serious problem in communities. So the more green space we have, the less we're going to have this problem with contaminated water. So we actually have cleaner water, and we have to spend less time cleaning up the water as well. And yes, we're also going to make sure that we do have healthy communities. We're also going to work on air pollution and make sure an important focus of ours is to make sure we have healthy communities.
Great. Thank you very much. The next question is about environmental justice. Scholars and organizations using an environmental justice lens have shown that climate change is not only about emissions, but about social relationships. Those who are systemically marginalized, example, people who experience homelessness, suffer the worst from climate change, and they rarely have the power to be involved in decisions about climate change. As a provincial candidate, what commitments will you make to not only mitigate or adapt to climate change, but also to include those who are most affected by it in the decision-making process? And we'll start with Cameron Dearlove of the NDP.
Okay, thank you. To answer this question, I think that we have to accept the fact that we systemically marginalize people, and I don't. I don't believe that that's something that we have to do. I don't believe that we have to have people who are homeless, people who are living in poverty. One of the main reasons that I'm running is on poverty reduction and reducing the poverty in our communities. I don't believe that we actually have to live with that. And so, as far as the environmental justice, I believe that we can solve that problem through social justice and making sure that people have, what they need. As far as the poverty reduction strategy, not only am I voting for a poverty-free Ontario, I'm also running for one as well. We need to raise social assistance rates. We need to increase minimum wage, tie those to inflation, institute a housing plan. We're planning to build 10,000 new affordable housing units over 10 years. A housing benefit for people who are already on a wait list for housing. We have 3,000 people who are waiting on affordable housing at the moment. Daycare, investing in daycare, investing in public transit, making sure that fares are frozen. There are so many different ways that the government can work to reduce poverty and help create people out of poverty and not allow people to have to face homelessness, as an example. As far as so that's sort of my first answer to the question. That actually I don't believe that we necessarily have to systemically marginalize people. Greenhouse gas reductions and climate change. Now, 30 seconds to go. We have a commitment in our plan to reduce greenhouse gases by 20% below the 1990 levels, 80% by 2050. Set for the Western Climate Change Initiative action plan, and put that into reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Conservation retrofit. I'll get in more into that later on, but I guess the basic premise is we don't actually have to have marginalized people.
Thank you, Cameron. I will be cutting off somewhat aggressively, but I will also try and allow the candidates to finish their sentence, because I think it's better for the audience that way. We're going to now go to Mark Cooperin from the Green Party.
Now, with regard to helping homeless, we have a very good policy on that. I mean, what we do have with that is, first of all, to make sure that any new housing development is also going to allow a certain amount for affordable housing for those in the low income and need the support. We're also going to make sure that we're going to expand the food box program to make sure that there's healthy food available for everyone, particularly with regard to local food. And now, with regard to issues of dealing with climate change, we are going to impose a $10 a ton carbon tax. I believe that might actually be the only party that's actually going to do that. As greenhouse gas is reduced, we're going to expand it to $15 a ton as they reduce. Now, I'm going to have to leave this off because I've got some figures here what we're going to do. We're also going to invest $400 million tax credits over 4 years for affordable community benefits and supporting ride sharing and carpooling. So flexible ways of making work and a refundable provincial tax credit for transit users. In addition, we'll maintain funding for public transit and urban municipalities to ensure that transit money is spent effectively on projects that maximize ridership. We also plan to establish more high occupancy vehicle lanes to encourage carpooling and faster commuting times to work. We're going to provide affordable transportation alternatives. The Green Plan reduces greenhouse gas emissions and smart is designed to make fuel efficient electric vehicles more affordable. We will offer $238 million over 4 years in tax credits for electric and fuel-efficient vehicles.
Thank you, Mark. We now go to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
It's important to consult with people, especially marginalized people, before making decisions, because oftentimes, the question states, oftentimes these people can be dramatically affected by the ultimate decision that's being made. Specifically when it comes to climate change, one of the groups that we have to definitely consult with is especially a lot of members of our northern communities. Because as many of you may realize, the north is going to be far more dramatically affected by climate change before we are. Not that we're not already feeling the effects. But I think that it's important to consult with our northern communities in relation to what we can do to mitigate climate change and also get them involved in the climate change reduction process, and also encourage investment in the north for a variety of green energy initiatives to not only make sure that we're helping create a more green, clean environment, but also to make sure that we can create jobs in the north. And there are some green energy projects already in the north, but I think it's important to make sure that we consult with, especially our northern communities, in relation to climate change and what we plan to do about it. I think it's also important to invest in public transit, as both of my colleagues have mentioned here tonight. That's why the Liberal Party has made a financial commitment to creating right here in Waterloo region light rail transit. And we've also made billions of dollars across the province committed to public transit. So there's a variety of different ways that we can consult, but obviously it is important to consult, especially with marginalized groups. And that's something that I would be committed to doing if elected as an MP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. We now turn to a question about heritage preservation. Given that the greenest building is the one already built, please explain if and how your party would support including restoration efforts as part of the infrastructure renewal funding. Do you have any concrete plans to do this in the next 4 years? And we'll start with Mark Cooper.
Well, I looked this over, and we don't exactly have any concrete plans for renewal, but we do have this, which I think is actually going to make the difference. We're going to actually put $1.6 billion for efforts to make sure we expand conservation and build businesses and homes. So we're going to be $800 million is going to be spent for helping homes doing making more energy efficient conservation, which is probably going to be also good work with regard to fixing the home as well, because that is often the biggest issue. Also, another $800 million into helping businesses become more energy efficient as well. Now, we're probably, this is, I think, what we can actually use in order to help preserve homes, because that is probably going to be a long way towards doing it. I know it's understandable that it's reduce, reuse, recycle, and that the restructuring the whole building possession, make them happier, is something that we need to do, as we are doing here with regard to fixing up the whole factories. And it is also important for us that we make sure we have healthy communities, and that is one of our projects as well. So we're also going to work with municipalities and individuals, and to actually make sure that we do build a healthier community and make them more people-friendly and less focused on costs.
Thank you, Mark. We'll now hear from Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Obviously, having world-class infrastructure is the foundation to a strong economy. So that's why the Liberal government has invested so heavily in infrastructure. We've actually invested more in infrastructure than any government since the 1960s. We've invested $62 billion in infrastructure since 2003. The result of that is we created over 600,000 jobs that were created or supported through infrastructure projects. And that's also meant a variety of renovations for a number of new buildings, renovating schools, hospitals, bridges, investing in renewal of public transit, for example. So there are a lot of different ways that we have really tried to promote maintaining and upgrading existing infrastructure all across Ontario. But that's not all we're going to do. We actually have a long-term infrastructure plan, and that's called Building Together. And what that plan outlines, it's a very detailed plan, and if anyone's interested, I can gladly get you a copy. We are committed to investing an additional $35 billion in Ontario's infrastructure over the next 3 years. And what that will do is that will create an additional 300,000 new jobs. So we are committed to making sure that we have in Ontario a top-notch infrastructure, but also making sure to renovate existing buildings and continue to use existing buildings to make sure that they can be used as public spaces and to make sure that their purpose can continue in the future. So we are definitely committed to Ontario's long-term infrastructure plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. We're now going to turn to Cameron Dearlove of the NPD.
Okay, thank you. Not to sound repetitious, but of course infrastructure funding is very important, and we have a plan to spend $35 billion over 3 years in infrastructure funding. But we need to make sure that we're spending that where it's going to count, right? We want to restrict the greenfield development and make sure that we're building up our cores. If we look at Kitchener, downtown Kitchener, for example, we can find a lot of wonderful examples of brownfield sites which have been turned into vibrant business spaces, and that's going to lead to focus on continuing, somewhat through intensification through our transit planning, L.I.F.E, for example, where by building a light rail transit system, we can attract more people to work and live in the downtown core areas, which will in turn make the brownfield sites more valuable and make people want to build there. And additionally, of course, if you look at a platform document, it's typically 40 to 50 pages long, in large type. So, back to the question, what are the concrete plans you have 4 years to work on, this type of development? Well, that's not something that we want to get into too much detail in the platform document, but we do need to consult with developers and make sure that we're supporting our developers who are interested in this kind of revitalization of old buildings. One thing that I understand from people who develop in brownfield sites, which are sort of abandoned factories, is that as you buy them and you really don't know what might be buried in the ground or what kind of contamination you might find. So the projects are quite risky, so we want to make sure that the governments are engaging with developers and supporting people up front.
Thank you, Cameron. We now turn to a question about water. In L.I.F.E Township, north of Shelburne, a proposal has been put forward to build the biggest quarry in all of Canada. The quarry would be over 5 kilometers wide and deeper than Niagara Falls. It would lie in the midst of a highly sensitive water recharge area that serves over 1 million Ontario residents, including those of us living in the Grand River watershed. The area contains karsts, underground caves, and rivers, which make it very difficult to predict the impact of quarry operations on the watersheds. If elected, what would your party do with respect to the handling of this mega quarry request? And we'll start with Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. We are already committed to undertaking a comprehensive environmental assessment of the quarry, and what we're also committed to doing is a review of the Aggregate Resources Act to look at how we extract aggregate here in Ontario. But this is a very complex issue. Obviously, why we need aggregate is aggregate is oftentimes is needed for concrete and a variety of other functions in building roads, bridges, buildings, that sort of thing. And so the issue of aggregate is not just cut and dry that we cannot extract any more aggregate. We have to continue to extract an aggregate as it is an integral building material that we use in a variety of different ways. And the problem is that, if aggregate is not extracted closely to where the building is actually going to be undertaken, it then costs a great deal more to build structures for trucking of aggregate from faraway sources. So this isn't specifically in relation to the quarry we're speaking of tonight. This is in aggregates generally. Just to explain to everyone that it's a very complex issue. It's not just a matter of stopping aggregates overnight or anything like that. We need aggregate if we want to continue to build and support infrastructure, which is what the previous question just talked about. But, specifically in relation to the Melancton quarry, we are committed to undertaking a comprehensive environmental assessment, but also taking a broader look at the Aggregate Resources Act more generally. Because obviously, as with most things, and as with the Liberal Party generally, it's all about balance. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have a good balance for our need for aggregate, which is not going to subsume anytime quickly, and also the need for environmental protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We now turn to Cameron Dearlove of the NDP.
Okay, thank you. As far as the NDP, we were calling for a full environmental assessment for some time. The mega quarry, the more you study it, the scarier it is, and that's just my own personal opinion. Am I powerful enough in the NDP to say that, definitely stop the mega quarry? I don't really have that power personally. It doesn't look like the kind of project that we would want. Looking at the potential environmental impacts, it could be extremely devastating, and that's why we need to study the issue, before we go ahead with that, which is exactly what we are looking for some time. Additionally, looking at the local community, they're generally quite other arms about this project. The land was purchased over time, very quietly and for a reason, and the public consultation period was quite short, and really didn't engage with the community and give them time to study the issue and really make an informed decision. And this is what we need to do in Ontario. We need to make sure that local communities do have a say. It's not just about the non-my backyard movement, but at the same, looking at whether people really want to allow potentially devastating impacts into their community. Eric's right. Of course, we do need aggregate. This is a necessary thing. I sort of look at Hamilton sometimes and look at the steel factories and say, "Oh, it looks disgusting," but at the same time, steel goes into our buses and trains and all sorts of buildings. And so of course it's a necessary evil, but at the same time we have to make sure that that we balance the need for this kind of product with the environmental implications of that.
Thank you, Cameron. We now turn to Mark.
Actually, the one, how come our food travels further than our stones? It makes no sense to me. Well, as actually what our plan is that we're going to revise the Aggregate Resources Act to encourage the use of recycling of aggregates. Actually, I know that all those wind turbines that you see in Kent County, I'm sorry, it's down Chatham County. I grew up in Kent County. Actually, where they came from is that when they had the rail line lines, all those rail lines on stones, the rail line lines went, the stones were just sitting there. Someone actually, someone did is make money. You see, as a business, went to pick up all those stones, and then he sold it to the people and they could wind turbines. So it was actually making money from just going from one location to another. And I think actually that's the option that we can look into further, is that we can actually see how much we can reuse the recycled aggregates that are already existing in buildings that are not being used, roads that are not being used, and we'll increase the royalty fees for aggregate extraction so we can fund the stewardess program to develop a standard for responsible aggregate mining in Ontario. They also consult with stakeholders to review the requirement for aggregates to be mined close to market. As I said, why is our food traveling further than our stones? They're not going to go, they're not going to expire. I understand that the cost would be an issue, but at the same time, we do actually ship a lot more food than we do stones. Are they actually that much heavier? Is that an issue? So it definitely is putting the burden on Scotland, the fact that we have to ship it close to Toronto, which is where most of the use is going to be.
Thank you, Mark. Our next question is about transportation policy. The province keeps growing, and highways keep getting more congested, but budgets are tight, and massive widening of provincial highways is neither affordable nor sustainable. Congestion pricing involves charging vehicles the minimum amount necessary to keep traffic moving freely for trucks, and for people in buses and cars who value their time. Will you support congestion pricing of provincial highways during peaks? And we'll start with Cameron Dearlove of the NDP.
Okay, thank you. I mean, this is more of a complex issue than yes or no answer. I believe, is it a bad idea? Absolutely not. And is it a good idea for every location? Well, maybe not. Again, this is an issue that obviously we need to be on a case-by-case basis. Is there more that we can do to reduce the kind of congestion that we see? Absolutely. We don't have more, I often see vehicle lanes on the 401, for example. I have no idea. Maybe that's something that we can implement and would reduce congestion. As we see the GO train coming here to Kitchener, it's an exciting thing. I kind of laugh at what John English wrote about it being just as fast as the Grand Railway was in 1860, but at the same time, this is an exciting development, and this is something that we can look to build on and improve on, and as invest in public transit, and we reduce congestion. So basically, my answer is maybe. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on whether it makes sense at the time, and whether we can take other measures as well to reduce congestion and reduce pollution.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll now turn to Mark Couturin of Greens.
It's actually an interesting question. Someone put wrong with that. I believe that what's happening is that when you impose it, what happens is people simply avoid the area and just congest somewhere else. Now, as I said before, we are going to impose a carbon tax, which I think is also going to have an effect because if you're stuck in traffic, that's probably when you're going to be using quite a bit of gas. So we're going to actually examine options to actually reduce the traffic. So one of the plans that we supporting in Toronto is what is called the Metrolinx Big Move. What we're going to do is build up 1,200 kilometers of rapid transit, which is triple what it exists now, and it's going to be it's going to make sure that 80% of residents in the region will actually be within 2 kilometers of a rapid transit. This, of course, means that since they can get faster to a public rapid transit, they're more likely to take it. It's going to be faster for them, and which is going to reduce cars on the road. And they're also going to make over 7,000 kilometers of new bike lanes, trails, and pathways for pedestrians and cyclists, and more walking and cycling safe and encourage more healthier lifestyles. So we don't have to bike on that 401. Anyone actually get that too? I wonder how many people listen to that show. So yeah, so basically our policy is to reduce the congestion going into Toronto with more public services. We also, as I said before, we're going to have more carpool lines. We're going to make sure there's more occupancy in cars. And of course, it would make sense if we had more electric cars and hybrid cars. That would definitely make a big difference.
Thank you, Mark. We'll now go to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. To answer the question, no, our party is not committed to congestion pricing. Pricing provincial highways during peaks. But I'll tell you what we have done. Since 2003, we've actually invested $10.8 billion in public transit in Ontario, which is the largest investment in a generation. We've also dedicated 2 cents of every liter of gas sold to support local municipalities' transit systems. What we're also doing is we are committed to bringing GO Transit to Waterloo Region. We're also committed to delivering full-day two-way GO Train transit to Waterloo Region. What we're also committed to doing is investing hundreds of millions of dollars towards light rail transit in Waterloo Region. What we're also going to do is we are going to upload services from municipalities so that they can afford, at least in Waterloo Region, so that Waterloo Region can afford the year-over-year funding necessary to support light rail transit. We also want to make Ontario a leader in electric vehicles. That's why we partnered with Toyota and to make the first electric RAV4 right here in Ontario. What we're also doing is we're committed to spending tens of millions of dollars in creating electrical charging stations right across this province to create the infrastructure necessary to ensure that we can support electric vehicles. And we have a goal to have 5% of all cars sold in Ontario by 2020 be electric, be emissions-free. So we have a strong plan when it comes to transit, and especially public transit. And we've invested a great deal of money in public transit. We do not believe that expanding roads is necessarily the answer. As I've always said, expanding roads to deal with traffic is like loosening your belt to solve obesity. It's not addressing the underlying problem. So we need to create public transit and the infrastructure necessary. Thank you. Let's shake this.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you again. I didn't mention this earlier, but thank you to our timekeeper, Ted, who's been keeping everyone in check. Much appreciated. We're going to turn now to audience questions. As I indicated earlier, there was a plate going around. If you still want to submit a written audience question, I believe we have about 40 minutes to address these. I'd like to invite up Derek Satnick, who's a managing partner at Lionsgate Innovations, to read the questions to candidates.
For those of you who haven't been forewarned, some of your questions are a little repetitive of each other's ideas, so I may not read them as written. Please just bear with me on that. I'm trying to combine and make sure we get as many questions in as possible. I'm also favoring questions which are specific and which are directed at all parties. So keep that in mind, okay? Thank you.
What do you plan to do with the moratorium on offshore wind?
Well, definitely would have to look at it. As I said, our plan is to make a local energy development. And we definitely going to make sure to work with the people. I believe that what happened with regard to the wind turbines is that they were imposed directly on citizens, which caused resentment and opposition to it as well. I've been told that one of the options they use in Germany is that when the wind turbines come in, they allow people to have a share of the profits, so which is obviously going to make them supportive. And so with our policy of making sure we have a local energy generation, we're definitely going to make sure that the people are involved with the energy development, which I think should make a difference in the existence of wind turbines.
Thank you, Mark Cooper of the Green Party. Turn to Eric Davis of the Liberal.
Well, thank you very much for that question. definitely what we need to do is we need to consult. We need to consult with the people who will be affected, and we also need to consult with the experts. We need to make sure that we get wind energy right in Ontario. And we as a government are definitely committed to the expansion of wind energy and to make sure that wind energy provides a good, reliable source of electricity to all Ontarians. And I think it's important to make sure that we do adequate consultation and review to make sure that, that whatever wind projects we have in the future, that they are adequately supported by the evidence and local residents and the experts. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We turn now to Cameron Gearlove, PNP.
Hey, thank you very much. You know, I'm one of those crazy people that actually really like wind turbines. You know, there's often quite a bit of opposition. I find them to be quite beautiful, and actually, you know, personally, I don't find it to take away from the landscape. I think they add to it. And but you know, it does depend on the location. You know, and in my travels in Europe, I saw a number of places where there were offshore wind farms, and I found it to be actually quite an interesting sight. But maybe I'm unique that way. You know, and I think Mark is absolutely right, actually, that you know, it needs to be more of a bottom-up approach, and we need to make sure that we're engaging in the community and that this is something that the community actually wants. I think what we see with a lot of the sort of community design my backyard movement is that people are finding that energy policy is being imposed on their local area, but we need to make sure that people are engaged and can contribute, which is exactly why we believe in supporting the microgrid program, for example, over a larger scale project, or as Mark mentioned, you know, making sure that people have an opportunity to buy in and to benefit from this. You know, this is green energy is a great opportunity for us to be empowered and to be a part of the ownership structure. You know, I look at, for example, in Europe, you know, Mark mentioned Germany, but in Denmark, example, where local people will get together and actually put up a windmill on their own and you know, buy shares and this sort of thing. This is the kind of thing we can be promoting, and when people feel empowered, they're going to be you know, far more inclined to be a part of this. And so you know, it's something that we need to look at, but we need to make sure that it's more organic and more grassroots than it is top down.
Thank you, Cameron. We'd like to invite our next question from the audience, or is that typical like around here? Okay, forgive me, this is a combination of several questions related to water. So if you feel that your question has been merged in here inappropriately and that I've forgone the intent of your question, write another one and pass it up through the chain. We'll make sure that we address it. Several thoughts relating to the importance of water supply, especially given the pressure on the water system from the bottled water industry, from development, from growth of population, from several conflicting resources. Specifically, what the party do to assist conservation authorities, to assist the reconsideration of the roles perhaps of ministries of environment, ministries of natural resources, in the role of protecting water.
Thanks, Eric. We'll turn first to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. When we came into office in 2003, one of the issues that we seriously wanted to address was the issue of water, and especially making sure that we had clean, safe drinking water. And that's why we, as government, have introduced a variety of legislation to protect water right here in Ontario. That's why we introduced the Clean Water Act, to make sure that we've adequately protected our water resources. So, as a government, we obviously need to make sure that our water resources are safely preserved for future generations to enjoy, and we are committed to making sure that that actually occurs. Now, I must admit, I forgot the second part of the question. If the petition be read back.
The GRCA, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Natural Resources, how many should members need to collaborate with these to reconsider protection of water?
Well, I know that one of the issues that we've done here locally, or at least given the municipalities the ability to address, is wellhead protection. So in the new Waterloo Region Official Plan, one of the issues that they're trying to seriously address is wellhead protection locally and protecting our water resources. And we had to make a variety of legislative amendments in order to allow that to actually occur. So we're very much committed to protecting our water supply and to make sure that it remains stable and safe going forward. We do not want to go backwards and go back to the days of the previous Tory government in relation to their water policies, which we view to be exceedingly flawed. We want to move forward and make sure that Ontario continues to have a safe, stable supply of water. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We now turn to Cameron Dearlove, the MEP.
Okay, thanks. So every once in a while a question comes up, then you can say, well, I'm certainly not an expert in this field. And that's, I think that's fine. The approach that I'm bringing to this election, and I believe that the approach that I would bring to government is more of a bottom-up approach. I'm personally a frontline worker. I work in employment services with individuals and helping people one-on-one. So I see how projects which come from a top-down perspective often don't actually mix with the way that things work on the ground. So as far as GRCA, Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of the Environment, and our water policy, we need to make sure that we're actually engaging with people on the ground, people who, the local experts, and make sure that policies reflect what's necessary at a local level.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll finish with Mark Recuperating of the Green Party.
That's not to be a bit, that's kind of meetings in it. Okay, we're going to work to strengthen programs to clean up and protect Great Lakes by supporting the Great Lakes Act, implementing the Great Lakes Charter Annex, working to strengthen the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, developing agreements with neighboring jurisdictions to prevent invasive species. Also, with regard to cleaning up the water, we're also going to work to upgrade our sewer systems and wastewater treatments to make sure that healthy water is flowing. Also, it's very important that we make sure we have more green spaces. As I said, what now ends up happening is that when water gets surfaces that are flat, pavement, rooftops and all that, what's actually in the happening is that water just quickly going into our sewers. It's not actually being filtered. And what's also happening is that any pollutions or problems on the street is also getting filtered into that sewers, which is getting into our water. This is not smart. And it's unfortunately the policy that had been developed previously, and it's been just working on. In fact, the idea of treating water is just let it go quickly, which of course takes all the pollutions that's carried with it into the water supply. Not good. So the best thing to do is to make sure we have more green spaces. And green spaces actually help filter the water, because when it hits the ground, it's just going to be on the ground. The water will filter through the soil. It takes a long time for it to go into the water supply. It'll be much cleaner and safer. Ironically, yes, going through the dirt will make your water cleaner. So that's why we need to have a policy of more green spaces. One thing we heard about recently, which is going to help and definitely going to look into, is permeable driveways, which actually is what driveways actually allow the water to filter right through. You can imagine how many driveways are out there, just flat paved surfaces. What happens to the water? Goes right into our sewers. We definitely need to clean that up.
Thank you, Mark. We'll go to our next audience question. Mike Thompson.
From the L.I.F.E Co-op, as supporters of the Green Energy Act, we would like to know how your party plans to enhance the rights of communities across the party has on the rights of communities involved in the rural communities with renewable energy projects in their area.
Thank you, Derek. Just pass that down to Cameron Dearlove, the MEP, who will start us off.
Okay, so again, it comes down to engaging and making sure that people have an opportunity to voice their opinion and also become informed. As I talked, for example, about the mega quarry program, it didn't seem that there was enough time for a lot of people to digest all the information about the proposal and to actually launch their opinions. Now, this is the first time the Green Energy began. We need to make sure that people have an opportunity to really become informed on a more significant level. Talking about the L.I.F.E Co-op is a perfect example of where a community is of people that's coming together to build green energy projects, and that's a fantastic thing. As that connectivity grows, that hopefully local opposition will be minimized as people realize that they can be a part of that and they can benefit from it.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll go now to Mark Recuperating of the Green Party.
As I said before, with regard to policy, it's going to have energy as being a local energy energy development, where the energy is going to be developed in the communities and then spread outward. And what we're actually, what I mentioned before, the way we're going to actually work on this is we're going to actually make the grid be what we call a smart grid. The idea of a smart grid is the energy would go to the nearest locations, then further and further out. What will happen is that, for example, you would have, say, solar panels and the wind turbines in some farmer's field. The energy, well, he's obviously not going to use that much of the energy, but then the extra energy is going to go into the larger cities, and then they can also generate energy, and anything extra they can go into larger cities. Because Toronto is obviously not going to be able to generate enough energy. Now, we also, now with regard to, are we going, is it going to be cost effective to work on the grid? Well, look what happened actually 2 days ago now, with the power went out simply because of one mistake. Our grid probably is definitely needs to be replaced. Also, another problem with the grid is the energy we're generating here. We have to generate long distances in Northern Ontario. This is about wastage and energy loss, and it's means of money loss, and it's making it more expensive for people to have the energy in the northern communities. If they're able to generate energy by using wind turbines or microhydro, they can then actually be able to have the energy there. It doesn't have to transfer over the long distances, which means we're actually ending up with savings of money, which can actually use to help the grid. And we're going to actually make sure that we don't have as many blackouts, which always seem to be suffering.
Thank you, Mark. We turn now to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Thank you for the question. In my regular job as a municipal planning lawyer, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a variety of municipal projects, especially a number of projects actually up near Lake Huron. And I don't know how many of you have been to Lake Huron. We're talking about like Ashton, Colbert, Wabash, Kincardine, that sort of area going up there. But you may have noticed that there's a lot more turbines there than there used to be. And I've worked on a number of different projects, primarily on behalf of municipalities, dealing with the development of turbine projects up and around the Lake Huron area. And I can safely say that, that there have been, on occasion, a variety of groups opposed to certain developments, especially wind developments up there. And the provincial government understands the important need of consulting with people and talking to people and hearing about their concerns in relation to green energy projects. But it also understands that it's important to invest in green energy, that we really view green energy as a key energy source for Ontario in the future, in the short, medium, and long term. So part of the Green Energy Act was to really encourage that development from occurring. So I think as with most things, you have to achieve a balance, but the Liberal Party is committed to expanding green energy in Ontario. And we really believe that going through a variety of solar and wind projects and other projects through the Green Energy Act is going to be key to Ontario's energy future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We're going to answer our next audience question.
Thank you. Especially since Fukushima and Michigan's recent nuclear troubles, what is your party's position on the role of nuclear energy in our supply mix, and specifically, do you plan to limit or eliminate nuclear energy facilities in Ontario?
Yes, Derek. We'll start with Mark Kudrin from the Green Party.
I could say yes and make it enemy because that's asking the questions, but no, we are definitely going to. Okay, yes, actually, we are eliminate, not eliminate, but we are definitely going to eliminate nuclear power. Our belief is that we can actually find alternatives. We can actually import hydro from Quebec, which is actually going to be enough to replace the hydro that we would lose by removing nuclear power, as well as I said, generating the options, micro hydro, wind turbines, and solar panels, as well as looking at the option of biodiesel, which is one that we just started to get into and has a lot of potential.
Thank you, Mark. We go to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Well, I'm sure everyone here knows that nuclear power in Ontario makes up over 50% of Ontario's energy supply. So we get approximately 50% of our energy here in this province from nuclear energy. Our party is not committed to constructing any new nuclear reactors. We are committed to refurbishing some of them. But what we are trying to do is create diversification in Ontario's energy supply. We are committed to conservation, as we understand that conservation is a very cost-effective way of lowering energy prices, and we have introduced a number of successful conservation programs right here in Ontario. But energy demand is still substantial, and we do not view it feasible, at least in the short term, to close any nuclear plants. We are committed to diversify Ontario's energy supply. That's why we are committed to bringing so many renewables online. And we're also committed to shutting down coal-fired generation. So, but we do not want to jeopardize Ontario's energy certainty and the certainty that, you know, when you flick the light switch, the lights will go on. We do not want to risk that certainty for both homeowners such as yourself or businesses. So we're committed to diversifying Ontario's energy supply, but at the present time, we're not committed to reducing our nuclear capacity at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We go now to Cameron Dearlove, the NDP.
Okay, thank you. You know, I'll start off by saying, actually, I was under the assumption that the Liberal Party was actually in favor of expansion of nuclear in Arlington, and I might be wrong about that, but my understanding was that there are being tendering for lack of expansion, or at least it's being explored, and that's not something that we want to do. We want to make sure that we want to stop any further expansion of nuclear. You know, it does make up over 50% of our power supply. It doesn't have to. You know, it's something that we would like to wean Ontario off of. You know, and as the person said about Fukushima, for example, well, you know, I mean, nuclear energy is typically safe, but not always. And when an accident does happen, it can be quite devastating. And so it's really not worth it for us. You know, we want to make sure we put that money back into green energy. You know, additionally, there's over $1 billion in reserves for the possible expansion of nuclear energy, and we want to take that money and put it into a home retrofit program where people will be empowered to receive $5,000 rebates on retrofitting their homes to make them more energy efficient, and for people who are on low income, $5,000 grants to make their home more energy efficient. Additionally, we want to make available up to $10,000 in loans for people to make their home more energy efficient, and those loans would then go right onto your hybrid list, and people can pay them off over time through the cost savings that they'd be receiving. So that's you know, I think that we have to think not only about the expansion of building energy generating capacity, but how can we start to turn the clock back and start generating less electricity.
Thank you, Cameron. We go now to our next audience question.
Do you have any plans to expand environmental education for children?
Good question. We start off with Eric Davis from the Liberal Party.
That is a very specific question. To my knowledge, I'll be honest and say I do not know. I know that we are committed to making sure that we have an excellent publicly funded education system, and that the Liberals have invested a lot of money in making sure that our kids get the best start, such as full-day kindergarten, but I am not going to go through our entire education policy for you, because that's not the question. But I will say that I think that expanding environmental education is a good idea. Having grown up here, I remember taking a variety of school trips over to Laurel Creek and learning about environmental impacts. I recall being in grade 7 and 8 and getting involved in a variety of environmental clubs at my school. And so I'm thoroughly in favor of promoting education for children and for encouraging a love for a natural environment. I really got that a lot from my father. We actually canoed the entire navigable length of the GREN River, which took us over a week. And it's pretty shallow in places, and dragging your dad in a canoe is not the most fun thing in the world, but I would definitely encourage young people to get a great environmental education, because I certainly have had one, and I feel that I'm all fit for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. We turn to Cameron Dearlove, the NDP.
Okay, well, you know, I haven't been teaching in a couple of years. You know, I'll start by saying, you know, as far as specific policy for expanding environmental education, same thing, no, I'm not sure of anything like that on tap. It's a great idea. I know Eric's comments about visiting different reservations and reserves and other education centers when I was a child and wonderful things. As far as my experience as a teacher, I remember in teacher college learning about differentiated learning and different learning styles, and one of them that there was some research around was the natural learner, somebody who actually engages in the natural environment and finds that learning comes more swiftly through that. So we need to, again, as we're looking at how we're engaging with children, making sure that children do have that kind of opportunity to engage with nature and learn more from them.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll turn to Mark Kitchener of the Green Party.
Interesting question. Actually, probably have to look at it because from my experience, children actually taught a lot about to the environment, to recycling, and the education, and often see them like go to the green shows. A lot involved with that, with the children, and the big children area. It'd be interesting to see what exactly they've been learning in schools right now. It's been a while since I've been in school. Actually, when I was in school, we were taught about overpopulation. I don't know how old I am. Now, one thing we are going to do, might be related, and just to mention this, I might say this answer to the question, is that we actually believe that it's important to make sure that we teach more about nutrition, food preparation, food growing, and all about to make sure that our children have a healthier diet and healthier understanding of food. I may not directly be involved with environmental, but I think we have lost the ability to understand the importance of food. And food is an important part of our environment. David Suzuki had did a lecture series with regard to called last year with regard to the environment, and he did mention quite a bit about how we misunderstand food, how it's grown, where it comes from, how it's gone in the ground, and what's important to it. I think we actually, with this policy, making sure people understand food better is important to us. We also teach the importance of the environment, because obviously our food comes from the environment, and a better understanding of food will help us understand why we need a healthy environment.
Thank you, Mark. We go now to our next audience question.
International, national, provincial, and local bodies of all flavors and stripes are making comment on CO2 emission levels, and 350 parts per million comes up normally with reference to years such as 2015. What is your personal position on global climate change, and what would you do to encourage the federal counterparts and the federal government to become more active in environmental issues?
Thank you for your assessment. We'll turn first to Cameron Zierlo of the NDP.
Okay, thank you. It's I was actually in Copenhagen for the climate change talks, and again, a disappointing result. Definitely, this is something that, I should state that as a candidate in Kitchener Center, I do believe that climate change, and I do believe that it's a good cause. I also believe that, while it is caused by humans, that we can come to some solutions. And, as far as the REEP policy, greenhouse gas reduction, we believe that 20% reduction below 1990 levels by 2020 and 80% reduction by 2050. Again, as I mentioned before, joining the Western Climate Change Initiative, cap and trade system, and investing the revenues from that into further reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Yes. Where was the question? Wondering if I answered the full question already.
Climate change and federal counterparts.
Right, the federal counterparts, absolutely. Whether we can get our federal counterparts to budge, on this sort of thing. I know that there would be one possible solution. That would be a strong NDP majority government federally as well, and definitely we could make some ground on that issue.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll turn to Mark Kitchener of the Green Party.
Well, actually, I've been told what they do to answer that question because of the climate change, which Dave apparently did not get, because I'm not a climate scientist. But then you might have to wonder why is that weatherman. Now, obviously, the Green Party is going to work with the other parties to make sure we deal with the issue of climate change. And the climate change is actually an interesting issue because there is some debate over it. It's possible that we have been affecting the climate ever since we discovered agriculture like thousands of years ago. Because with our development of the land, we of course know that we've been producing cows, and cows produce a lot of methane, which produces a lot of problems. So yes, meat does cause the problems. And as well, it's not just the use of cars as well, and the use of cars and coal plants as well, which is obviously having an effect as well. Now, we all know that our use of the environment is definitely destructive, cutting down trees, making more farmland, losing. By turning down trees, we're actually helping us to lose ground, and we're definitely doing damage to the environment, and we're definitely affecting it. And if we're not careful, we could actually make it so that we can't even survive. Recently, actually, listened to a program CBC with regard to changes. It's interesting. We discussed how by over farming an area, we actually can reduce the effectiveness of the ground, which of course causes us to starve to death. Quite interesting when we think of it studies. But definitely have to consider the fact that what we are doing, how we're affecting the environment, even beyond the issue of climate change issue, we don't want to die. We don't want our people to die. We don't want our children to die. We have to make sure that we survive. Let's do what we can to help the environment.
Thank you, Mark. We'll finish up this question with Derek Davis of the Liberal Party.
And let me just start off right off the bat and say that I do believe in man-made climate change. So I just want to put that on the record. Unlike the Tory candidate for Kitchener Centre, I do believe that it is occurring, and I do believe we are contributing to it. To be honest, I was shocked when I read that statement in the paper and read that he actually repeated it the following day. I thought that the jury was in on that one. He apparently maintains the jury is out. What I would do is I would encourage all of you to ask your local Tory candidates outside of Kitchener Centre if they believe in man-made climate change. I would love the answer to that question to see if perhaps we have more surprises right here in the Waterloo region. But specifically, we obviously need to address man-made climate change, specifically in relation to the federal government. One of the things that Premier McGinty's fought for is basically saying, look, if you are going to support Alberta's oil industry and spend millions of dollars in that, why don't you simultaneously support Ontario's green energy industry? And that's our position, that Ontario has an emerging energy industry here. And we are creating tens of thousands of new jobs in the green energy sector. And our question to the federal government is, well, if you're willing to support non-clean energy in other provinces, or other energy projects in other provinces, why not support our green energy projects right here in Ontario? Invest the millions of dollars in that. If you're not going to remove those other investments, at least invest equally in what we're doing. And that would be our question to the federal government, because I think it speaks to the federal government's values if they do not make those investments. And I think it also speaks to their Ontario Tory counterparts, that they would rather scrap green energy in the province of Ontario, take away all those tens of thousands of jobs, rather than investing in them. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We turn now to our next audience question. Derek?
Thank you. Highways and highway maintenance. There are questions about a high-speed rail corridor from Windsor through Quebec City. What would your party's position be to support such a move? And relating to highway maintenance and funding thereof, gas taxes, no gas taxes, congestion pricing, no congestion pricing, more debt. How would you handle highway maintenance?
Thank you, Derek. We'll start with Mark Cooper.
So just to clarify, it's at high speed, so that means like a high-speed lane. So don't we have a full high-speed rail? Oh, high-speed rail. That's confused, like if we're talking a high-speed highway, that's a 401 highway. So I definitely would, actually would be in favor of a high-speed rail. We definitely need to look at options like that, because obviously the more traffic we take off the road, the better for us. And I have to say though, that cars are quite stressful. And so I think if we can encourage more people to ride the rail, as the train as the next phase was, then we definitely would probably produce a healthier people. We buy in the staff, we do like our personal transportation, and it's a question of can you be able to do that, but I can tell you one thing. Driving all the way from Windsor to Ottawa would not be fun. I would definitely prefer a train direct, because I can tell you that it'd be nice if they had a high-speed train directly up there when I was over there. Now, with regard to highway maintenance, we are definitely not going to eliminate any taxes. We're definitely look at the gas tax, and we do believe that the gas tax has to be focused more on helping municipalities. The gas tax is used to help fund public transportation. So basically, we definitely need to use that. We definitely need, it might be a pain for it, but think about it this way. That tax you're paying is reducing the number of cars on the road, which is helping you get to where you're going faster.
Thank you, Mark. We'll turn to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
In relation to a high-speed corridor, rail corridor from Windsor to Quebec, that's an idea that I've heard bandied about for several years now. It's obviously something that should be investigated to determine its feasibility, but the Ontario Liberal Party does not have any, has not made any commitments to creating such a corridor, but I would definitely support at least investigating its feasibility and seeing if it can all be achievable. Obviously, that would be a quick way of getting people across Ontario and into Quebec fairly quickly and efficiently. In relation to highway maintenance, as I've already stated here tonight, we've invested a great deal in infrastructure, including our highways, and maintaining them. We've also dedicated 2 cents of every liter of gas sold to support local municipalities' transit systems. We are committed to highway maintenance, but we're also committed to investing in public transit. That's why we've invested over $10 billion in public transit right here in Ontario. And that's, including building new subways, rapid transit systems, streetcars, and bus lines in communities all across Ontario. So we are definitely committed to making sure that we have the infrastructure necessary to promote quick and efficient public transit across Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We turn to Cameron Dearlove of the NDP.
Okay, I think a little bit about the fight to get LRT up one side and down to King Street, and imagine the fight to get high-speed rail corridor between Windsor and Quebec City. Love to see it, absolutely. But, it's not in the short-term plans, no, but certainly something to be investigated. I've taken high-speed trains in other countries, and kind of jealous of the rail infrastructure that is invested in, and where we don't have anything comparable. And it would be wonderful to see. Obviously, it's far more efficient to be traveling on land, on rail, than is by airplane. So it's certainly something that would be amazing for us to have here. As for highway maintenance, the $35 billion in infrastructure funding that we slated, as well as $70 million over 3 years, for 3 years, for municipal infrastructure, spending on roads and bridges. As for the gas tax, we have no plans on changing that, or the funding model for municipalities with public transit, except for bumping the public transit funding up to a 50% level, that 50-50 partnership that I was talking about a little bit earlier. To make sure that municipalities have the kind of funding they need for operating costs and for expansion of public transit in the cities.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll go to our next audience question now. We have, I believe, time to sneak in 2 more audience questions. Derek, go ahead.
I'm cramming questions together here, so forgive me if your question isn't much into it. Local food, local animals. What are your views on urban gardens, on the chickens, on livestock? And we've had some comments on local food tonight. Are there other parties' positions on local food, and what would your party do or you personally do to protect local farming?
Thanks, Derek. We'll start with Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. We believe in local foods. That's why we're committed to introducing a Local Food Act here in Ontario. Specifically when it comes to urban gardens, and the issue of, I know that there's been an issue locally of chicken coops and those sorts of things being held in urban properties. That has typically fallen under municipal jurisdiction, and a variety of municipalities have decided to deal with it in a variety of different ways. Some of those municipalities I may or may not represent, so I'm not going to comment on their specific policies or bylaws in relation to the regulation of animals or chicken coops or what have you. But to say that we are committed to ensuring more local food. That's why one of the things that we really want to do is ensure that more local food is actually introduced in schools. Because we want to make sure that our children have the healthiest food possible. And we've done a great deal to ensure student nutrition in our schools by trying to eliminate foods that would make our kids unhealthy. And I think, as my green colleague has pointed out, local foods are generally very nutritious and a good support of the local economy. So we are definitely committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We'll now continue with Cameron Yearlow, the NDP.
Does this mean I'm not supposed to have a cow in my backyard?
No.
Oops. No, I'm just joking. As far as animals, within the urban environment, again, it's a local issue. The rules were changed in the last couple of years for backyard chickens. Personally, I'm for it. I'm not running this week, so I don't really think it's any harm in saying, I think it's fantastic if we can grow more of our food and bring more of our food right here within the city, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to do it. It's a wonderful thing to do. As far as local food, we believe in helping to protect our family farmers. It's becoming more and more scarce here in Ontario to have a family-run farm. It's more and more difficult to make a profit doing so. And as we see more sort of corporate farms and large-scale farms moving in, so we want to make sure that we give people the means to stay on their family land and continue as they have. One of the key components to that is our Buy Ontario plan, and what that is ensuring that government-run agencies or the government sources as many products as possible here in Ontario. And the key component of that is food. So if you look at, for example, our hospitals or schools, obviously they're major purchasers of food, and we want to make sure that they're buying them here in Ontario first. And a number of other, we've been working with local farmers to see what kind of measures they would like, and a couple of other small things as well, such as ensuring that the LCBO stocks more local lines and making sure that we can grow more local products here, as well as helping doctors figuring their debt to practice in underserviced areas and make sure that people have the health check that they need in rural areas.
Sorry, thank you, Cameron. We'll turn finally to Mark for future revenue.
Well, seeing as how this is our last debate, I made these notes, which is actually complete details of local food policy. If anyone wants to pick them up afterwards, I probably don't think I need them. As I can imagine, yes, it is a major important policy of ours to support local food, to help support local farmers. Now, it's unfortunate, yes, chicken is at the municipal level. It was actually look at the issue with the local chicken that they had earlier this year, Martin was visiting on the chicken farm. And it's definitely it's unfortunate that there is this resistance to local chickens. I don't know why people say coyotes are going to come into the area because there's local chickens. Boggles the mind, I have to say, but whatever. We also would definitely encourage more local production. As I said, we are also going to have children being taught about how to raise and grow food, and we're going to talk PLC. I believe this is part of our policy, and it's one that they actually talk about day after mayor, which is actually help them to raise local food. It definitely is a good idea to help children grow local food. And we also definitely going to make sure there's more local food in our schools and our hospitals, and to make sure that they are eating healthier. We definitely want healthier children, and the kids want to eat better. We're also going to help provide the support for farmers. We're going to provide benefits to for helping local farmers and for being able to process the food and with the benefit of processing centers. Also provide some more tax incentives for farmers. As I said, I don't think I'm going to need this anymore. Since it's our last debate, I want to pick it up. It's going to extend the details on it.
Thank you very much, Mark. With our final audience question, I turn the mic over to Derek Sepnick, who I'm sure has compiled something excellent out of at least 14.
This question is first nice to see candidate. Many of these questions are from diverse topics, so forgive the fact that I couldn't really combine this with any other topics, but we want to make sure that we can submerge as many of the various topics as you as a group represent as possible. 90% of Ontario's heritage buildings are in urban centers, so there is a conflict between the Places to Grow Act and the Shared Heritage Act. What would you or your party do to try to resolve and make something healthy of this conflict?
Then answer to this question, we'll start first with Cameron Dearlove of the NDP.
Good question. I didn't quite catch 90% of
Heritage buildings tend to be in urban centers,
So 90% of heritage buildings tend to be in urban centers.
and therein lies the conflict, places to grow versus heritage.
So what do we do in terms of choosing between places to grow and our heritage?
Okay, you know, I would choose heritage, you know, and taking a look at some of the buildings that we have here in Kitchener. I mean, why would we want to, you know, it's something that we want to celebrate our heritage. You know, obviously at the same time, we need to make sure that, you know, urban sprawl doesn't continue and that we're engaging in urban intensification. You know, certainly it's a concern, but you know, I don't believe that that our heritage buildings are fully stopping us from realizing the potential of our downtown cores as far as building up rather than building out. You know, if it is, then certainly we want to engage in find a solution to that. But you know, I definitely would like to ensure that we can celebrate our urban heritage as well.
Thank you, Cameron. We'll turn now to Mark Kudra from the Green Party.
Okay, that's an interesting question because of some of the problems we have with some of our buildings is they're not exactly, not only are they in bad shape, but also the fact that they might contain unhealthy products and well, it has to be taken care of. It definitely would be best for us to actually be able to use the heritage buildings. We do see that now, the tannery and the Kaufman factory, because of the Kaufman laws, which actually is close to where I live, as well as the tannery. So we definitely see that working with that is definitely something we actually have to look to. As I said, our focus is to make sure we have healthy communities and we're not trying to look down on the bottom level. So we can see that if it's something that is definitely that people want, then we're going to have to make sure that it's something that we are going to work around. And especially if something is important to our heritage. It's kind of a complex issue. I think the one building we lost was the one that looked like a castle, I think, because that had been torn down recently. And I believe that, I know my immediate family, well, my family, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and my wife, was very disappointed that happened. They really wished that was saved because it was an important part. And I suspect that some of the people here are upset about losing that as well. So we definitely have to look into issues like that, look at the community, what can we do to save buildings like that. So it's something that is an important heritage, something that we are proud of, is not lost just because of the fact that no one's willing to take care of it. And I think we'll find that that's often in many other communities as well. It is important for us to have healthier communities and happier communities as well. And obviously, if people are going to be unhappy with losing a building, actually I can mention this story about that. When I was growing up in China, we did lose a very important to us because they built a mall right in downtown, and it was a rather unique building that we lost and was part of our heritage. And it's unfortunate that these things happen.
Sorry about that, Mark. It is 2 minutes, and that's up, but thank you for that answer. We turn the final answer to an audience question to Eric Davis of the Liberal Party.
Well, first off, I love this question because this really deals with what I deal with on a daily basis, working with Heritage Act and Places to Grow Act, etc. I am a passionate advocate for preserving heritage structures. I believe that we need to make sure that we do not tear down our heritage structures, but I believe we can have both intensification and preserve heritage structures. I do not believe it has to come down to a one or other proposition. Oftentimes, you know, if you're looking at large swaths of property, not every building along King Street or major corridors in the city of Kitchener or other municipalities, not all of them are heritage structures. But I think it's important for all of you here, if you are passionate about preserving heritage structures, to ensure that municipalities make investments and designate structures where appropriate as heritage structures, so that we can avoid them being torn down in the first place. I think we can accommodate either the incorporation of heritage structures into newer buildings where appropriate, or we can not have to necessarily remove heritage structures, and we can find new and innovative ways of intensifying while still preserving our heritage. I know that there can be perceived to be a conflict between the two acts, but I don't think that there needs to be. I think that we can have both. What we need to do is we just need to have creative solutions. And I'd also suggest to you that everyone here and anyone else should work with municipalities to let them know that preserving heritage structures is a priority for you, and that it's important for municipalities to protect them in the first place. And let's try to find creative solutions to creating both, to having that mixture.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you once again to Derek Setnick for presenting those audience questions and putting together numerous disparate ideas into something cohesive so that we could try and get most of them. To anyone who hasn't had their question answered, I invite the candidates to stick around after the debate to answer more of them closer to you. We'll like to finish up tonight with 2 minutes for each candidate to wrap up their points. We'll start that with Eric Davis of the Liberal Party, then go to Mark and Cameron, which is in the reverse order of the introductions. So, Eric, take it away.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank the organizers for tonight's debate. I think they deserve a round of applause for organizing this debate in the first place. Specifically, I'd like to thank Scott and Derek for their excellent moderation and question asking. I think, and I'd also like to thank you all. I'd like to thank you all for having me here today, for inviting me to participate, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming out here this evening and for actually participating in tonight's debate. I think environmental issues are incredibly important and can oftentimes not receive the attention that they necessarily deserve in other debate formats. So I'm really glad we had a chance to debate environmental issues here tonight. I think it's incredibly important. And I'd also like to point something out to you all. And this is the first time that I've seen this here in a sort of all candidates forum. I'd like to congratulate my colleagues as well that I think we had a debate, that we had a collegial debate tonight. And I don't recall hearing one attack from any candidate on another party. And basically what we had here tonight was different visions being expressed and competing visions. We all don't agree on everything. But I think that, we have managed to have an entire debate, discuss the issues in a collegial fashion, just expressing our different viewpoints and letting you make up your mind as to which vision you share and which you feel to be the most reasonable. And I think that we would be very well off to have this style of debate in a number of other forums, because I think oftentimes in politics you tend to focus too much on attack and not a competition of vision. I do point out that the Conservative Party is not here to express a vision on the environment. That's not an attack, merely an observation. But anyway, my time is done. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for wrapping that up quickly, Eric. We go now to Mark Buchanan of the Green Party.
Well, I guess he's the pro here. Obviously, me and Cameron had the experience. This is our first campaign. And and I'd like to thank everyone as well for coming in. I'd like to say that if you want to check more of our policy, I can actually go to it's timeforgreen.ca, and you can actually see all the details. Sorry. You can also see the details about our policy with regard to local food, community, open government, health, and as well as to employment, and with regard to our energy policy. And I also like to say that it's time, and it is good that we have debates like this. Unfortunately, it's probably a lot more boring than if we did have the PCs and the Liberals and everybody else arguing back and forth and fighting and who knows what. That's pretty much more interesting with Dave in it, isn't it? But I'd like to say, though, that it is time for the Green Party. It's time for our green policies of a more open government, of a smarter energy policy, of a smart grid, of support local food. And I just believe that it is time to vote green.
And for going first, you get to go last. Cameron, dear love of the NDP.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, echoing the thanks to the organizers and to the moderators, and of course to everybody here. I'm always impressed by how many people come out to these debates. It's wonderful to see. And these are my favorite debates, actually. The certain interest debates or the special interest debates, I think, are the best ones because we get to get far more in depth on issues and really talk about some areas that we're passionate about, and it's wonderful to see, and absolutely great to see that we can have collegial debates and that we can just express our different visions. It's great. So thank you very much for being involved in your democracy, and to Eric who's making the trip all the way from KW here to Kitchener Center. I'll just start by saying that we do have a major decision to make on October 6th, considering competing environmental visions. And just to tell you a few of our priorities, for the NDP, we want to immediately close the coal plant, stop nuclear expansion, help people to save money and cut down our overall energy use. We want to engage with municipalities and expand public transit, but at the same time make sure that we do so not on the backs of riders, and make sure that ridership actually expands by freezing our transit fares. We want to support cycling in our transportation mix and make our green energy projects make our green energy projects focus for our energy expansion and not necessarily on nuclear. And make sure that locally we have more microgrid emphasis. But when you are voting, of course, environmental issues might be front and foremost for you. But I do urge you to consider the social implications as well. That our environmental policies and all government policies. What are the effects on people who are marginalized, people who are living in poverty? Please, I just urge you to vote thinking about. Whether we're voting on a government that will really be representing everyone and making sure that everyone has a great access to opportunity here in Ontario. Thank you very much.
So we're running a little bit late, so I'll say this as fast as I possibly can. We'd like to start by thanking once again Rockway Mennonite Church for hosting us here tonight. We'd like to thank all the organizing partners, including the Community Renewable Energy Waterloo, L.I.F.E, Charitable Research Reserve, TransitionKW, Sustainable Waterloo, North Waterloo Region Branch, Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, and Environmental Defense. I apologize if we've omitted anyone. REEP has been videotaping this, and it will be up on YouTube by Saturday. So if you just search, Provincial Election Forum on Environmental Issues, Kitchener, you should find it. I'd also like to thank the candidates. It's very difficult to be a candidate, as I know, and it is a very brave act to put your name on the ballot. So I'd like to give them all a round of applause. Not for just doing that, for coming out. I'd also like to thank our volunteers, including our timekeeper, Kay, who kept not just the candidates but myself on time. As well as all of our ushers who brought the questions up, and Derek Satnick, who was actually originally booked to moderate this, but showed up very kindly and sort of assisted me with those. I don't know if I would have been able to parse them quite as well. I'd like to finish quickly with a quote. John Ralston Saul says that a democracy requires a tough society. I think debates encourage that kind of toughness. It encourages us to think about what the election is really about and have candidates face the questions that are pressing to us and on our minds. So I think it's a very important thing that you all came out tonight. I really appreciate it. The organizers do, so thank you very much to the audience for being here tonight and for your intelligent and articulately written questions. That concludes it. It is 5 minutes, 10 minutes to 9 o'clock. Thank you very much again, and have a great night.